We may be remote, but we're still talking college football. Welcome on in, ladies and gentlemen, once again to another great episode of Inside the Huddle. We appreciate all of you for joining us once again. I am your host, as always, Lucas Hill. We got a lot to talk about. Let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, because there's so much that is going on throughout college football and throughout, just overall in the sport. And we have to discuss it quite frankly. What is the future looking like in the NFL draft? It's our NFL draft special today, so we are excited to bring you that. We'll have none other than our good friend Zach Linfield come on and talk some UFL with us. So it's always a beautiful day here. Again, guys, if you're watching us wherever you are, whether it be on X, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Instagram, thank you guys for hopping on with us. Make sure you give us a like. Make sure you follow. Make sure you repost to all those groups out there. And let's go ahead and let's get this thing started. So, first of all, I want to talk to you all about some news that occurred over the weekend. So, big news for Bowling Green. As many of you know, Scott Loeffler now heading out to Philadelphia to be the new quarterbacks coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. And here's my thing on this. Loeffler is an excellent coach. You know, I got a chance to watch them in Bowling Green in the 68 Ventures Bowl out in Mobile, going up against Arkansas State. I thought that offense was really spectacular. And look, it may be because you had a guy like Harold Fannin, because of all the athleticism and the type of guy that he is. But quarterback play was a big factor for Bowling Green last year. I mean, you look at who they had. Connor Bazelak, to me, was one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the MAC. And I don't think it was fair that he was not really noticed a lot. And it was incredible that he was. It was mind-boggling to me. Here's a guy that 66% completion percentage, 3,000 yards, 18-5 touchdown to interception ratio. Bazelak was a very, very good quarterback. Now, yes, it may be because of the checkdowns, but his progression and what he's shown has been incredible. Scott Loeffler, look at what his background looks like. Absolutely incredible. It's his first time back in the quarterback in the NFL ever since 2008, ironically, with the Detroit Lions, who went 0-16. So I don't think that's a knock on him. I think it was just part of him being in a bad organization at a time where it just was not fun to be a Detroit Lion fan. Do I think things could have changed? Absolutely. Absolutely, I think things could have changed. But it didn't. But I do have a lot of love for Scott Loeffler. You know, his background, former offensive coordinators at Temple, Auburn, Virginia Tech, and Boston College. Then goes to Bowling Green and helps turn that program. That was a team that Bowling Green, the first 3 years, they won 7 games. Your last 3 years, you were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, especially in conference play. Like I said, you were 7-22 your first 3 years, 2019, 2020, and 2021. The last 3 years of Scott Loeffler's tenure, you were 20-20. Now, you may be looking at this and saying, oh, it's 500. But look at who you had. Look at where Bowling Green was before. I mean, Bowling Green was not a very good program. So now you got a new head coach. Eddie George, who will take over as the Bowling Green head coach, just won a Big South OVC title, just won Coach of the Year as well. Eddie George is a very interesting hire. bringing him back to the state of Ohio, it's a very, very good one. I think Bowling Green is going to be in for a rebound year. Do I think things are going to go all dandy? No, absolutely not. You're still going to struggle. But I think that with a guy like George coming in, he can hit the portal hard. I mean, he really can't turn a program around. He did it in 4 years, brought Tennessee State to a postseason, something that they haven't done very often. You know, it was awesome to see them. This is the first time they went to the postseason since 2013. I mean, and you're talking about a team that hadn't been very good and really wasn't on the map in a long time. And in comes a guy like Eddie George, who brings a lot of swagger, a lot of poise, a lot of youth to this organization. And now you start to have a lot more confidence in what Bowling Green has to offer in the future, being a potential contender in the MAC. And that's what I love about Eddie George. It's just what he does when he relates to kids and what he is doing to be an impact in the sport of football. And I think that it says for his legacy and what he is going to continue to do as a coach in the college ranks. He's a very successful college coach. I think there's a lot to look forward to with Eddie George. I really do. And I think, and look, when you look at where Eddie George's background is, Ohio kid true and true, glad to see him back at Bowling Green. So that's absolutely huge. Again. All right. Let me ask you this. So we'll get into the NFL draft special, which I think we'll probably do sometime tonight, I would say. I don't know if we'll be able to get to it today, right now, but I am excited for that one. I'm probably, we'll think about it. We'll see what happens today. But regardless, let's continue. So I told you guys about on Friday, which I was unable to do a live show. I think like 1 or 2 days last week because of the internet, which was so bad. Bro, it made me so mad. Not gonna lie to you, it was ridiculous how bad that internet was. But I went over some strength of schedule, and it was really intriguing to me just to see the strength of schedule and see where these teams were. So it was really impressive. So the ESPN Top 40 strength of schedule got released. So Oklahoma has the toughest schedule. You welcome Michigan and Auburn in September. You have road games to South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama once you get to October and November. Plus you play Texas, Ole Miss, and LSU. How much tougher can it get? So if you remember, guys, we talked to Parker Toon the other day. 6, 7, 8 wins is an expectation. Understandably so, knowing where this program is at this current moment, with where we have a guy like Brett Venables at the current moment. I am not sold quite yet on Brett Venables. I still have a lot of concerns about him. I have a lot of concerns about what he's going to do long term. But again, there's still a lot that we have to discuss that many people are going to doubt him. And it's somewhat concerning to see where this team could be in the near future. And look, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to work out at the end of the day. If it does, congratulations, it does. But this year, it's tough. Number 2, Florida. 3, Arkansas. Wisconsin at 4. Vandy at 5. Mississippi State at 6. South Carolina at 7. Kentucky at 8. By the way, Mark Stoops and company, with what's going on in the background, this could be a bye-bye year for Mark Stoops and company. LSU at 9. They're projected to win 8 games, considering the schedule. You go to Death Valley, you go to Ole Miss, you go to Alabama, and then Texas A&M. Texas A&M to me is just, we'll see what happens at the end of the year. I don't have the most confidence in A&M. South Carolina is an interesting one. Here's what's going to be so interesting about South Carolina in 2025. I do think that this is a team that can win 10 games. I really do. And you can disagree with me on that. That's fine. Here's your schedule. It's fairly manageable, and you can sneak in a good bit of wins here and there. You play Virginia Tech in the Athletic kickoff game. That's Brett Pry's big-time game. That could determine his job, by the way, especially when you bring in Philip Montgomery and the expectation that you had last year that you are not able to do. South Carolina State, Vandy, I do expect those two to be wins. I think South Carolina, despite losing a lot of pieces on defense, I still think that they're going to be very, very good. I think that that's going to be an elite defense still next year. And Dylan Stewart, to me, is going to be Defensive Player of the Year in the SEC next year. His counterpart, Kyle Kennard, won it last year, which we got to talk to at the Senior Bowl. It was an awesome experience to get to talk to him. But Stewart is a dude, and he's going to be a very special player in the near future. At Missouri, at Peru, with a brand new quarterback and a brand new offensive scheme, you're losing your top 3 on offense in Brady Cook, Luther Burden, as well as Armand Membu at quarterback. We'll see what happens with them, with Ahmad Hardy. With Ahmad Hardy in Peru Field. We'll see what happens with them. Kentucky, you should win that one. At LSU, that's a tough one. But I do, especially at night in Death Valley, which I think it's going to be. Home against Oklahoma, home against Bama, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, Clemson. Here's the only losses that you can take. A loss against LSU, sure. I don't think you're going to win. So I think you start off 5-0. I'm not going to lie. I think it's going to happen. Alabama, I think you might pull out a win. But again, we don't know, because we don't know the quarterback situation right now. Right now, I have South Carolina winning that football game. But again, I'm not sure what to expect. At Ole Miss, we don't know what Austin Simmons is going to do in year 1. I have a lot of high expectations for Austin Simmons. But again, we just don't know what the kid is going to do. So it's definitely going to be a challenge in year 1 for him. But I do expect him to perform well. I really do. I think it's going to be a really, really fun time with Austin Simmons at the helm. So I think that one could go to Ole Miss. At Texas A&M, that's an interesting one to me because you physically beat them up. How does Texas A&M respond? Toss-up games, I have Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Clemson. You could go 8-5, you could go 10-2, and make the playoffs. You can't accept another 9-3 seed under Shane Beamer. Now, we'll see what this Mike Shula offense looks like in year 1 because Mike Shula has been a long-time offensive coordinator in the NFL. What is he going to do in the near future? We'll see what happens with soccer. All right, I'm going to knock out a quick break. Get Zach Linfield on to talk some Michigan Panthers football.
Are you a music producer, DJ, or just someone who loves to remix tracks? Well, say goodbye to messy, low-quality track separations And hello to vocalbreaks.com, the most powerful AI-driven music editing tool on the market. Unlike other separation tools, Vocal Breaks harnesses the most advanced AI model available, delivering crystal clear vocals, pristine instrumentals, and an unmatched precision, all online with no software required. You can extract vocals or instrumentals with studio quality accuracy. It's perfect for remixes, mashups, karaoke, and music production, and for a faster, cleaner, and more reliable than any other service. So if you want the best, don't settle for less. Go on over to vocalbreaks.com and use code LucasHill10 now and experience the full future of AI-powered music editing. That's vocalbreaks.com using code LucasHill10.
Zach Linfield, Michigan Panthers insider. What's going on, man? How are you today?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. We getting geared up for the season. Can't believe it's so close.
Year number 2 of the merger between the XFL and the USFL is here. Last year was my first year getting involved with the UFL. I had a lot of fun just getting to know about the league and really getting to dive deep into it. Now this is our first full year really covering the league in depth, and we're really excited for it. So, Zach, we appreciate you being on here. Michigan Panthers, this is it for them. A lot to expect, not just from this year, but also from the league itself, which we'll get to in a little bit. But first, let's talk about the Panthers itself. And it sounds crazy to say this when you talk about an NFL team that you think, what is the biggest hole to fill? The biggest hole to fill for Michigan is obviously special teams. You lose Jake Bates, who is arguably the best kicker in all of the UFL. And I would say it was my UFL MVP last year. And I know if you were to tell me last year that a kicker would be the biggest hole to fill on a team, I would have thought you would have had a gun to your head. But Zach, talk to me about the special teams unit this year for Michigan. And really, I wouldn't just say special teams. Who is the guy that you really expect to just show up in this season for the Panthers that can really make a difference in crunch time situations?
It's hard to say because they've got a guy that played 5 years at Clemson and BT Potter that would be expected to be pretty good. And I figured during his college tenure with the Tigers that he was going to be a heck of an NFL kicker. And it just never ended up panning out after he was an undrafted free agent into the National Football League. And here he is kicking for the Panthers a few years later. So, he had a tremendous career with Clemson, but if there's going to be that guy in special teams to pull out the highlighter on the spotting chart, it's Simon Laria. From what I've seen in tape for him as a punter, his release time is very quick, and he can punt the heck out of the ball with a pretty good hang time. So if the Panthers are backed up and they need a guy to stand on the end line and really pooch that thing away to try to put it back onto the other side of the field, I'm looking for Simon Laria to have a pretty good year for Michigan.
One of the biggest things that Michigan has been searching for is just quarterback consistency. And that's something that I think that's been really, really interesting to me. This year is interesting. You got Danny Etling, who I've seen before because I'm a Baton Rouge kid. I've seen him before in offense. Before Joe Burrow came there, that was actually one of the most consistent quarterbacks that we got to see from LSU. So, but again, like you mentioned, pro career just hasn't turned out. EJ Perry took a majority of the snaps this year. But you're bringing in a guy that I think is a fairly interesting prospect in Bryce Perkins. So I got to see Bryce Perkins at Arizona State and at Virginia. I thought he was a fantastic quarterback, very mobile, guy that can get outside the pocket and do some damage with his legs. Who are you going to roll with if you're a quarterback's coach going into this year? Is it going to be Perry, or will it be a guy or not Perry because he's showboats, but is it going to be Perkins, or is it going to be Etling?
In my unprofessional opinion at this point, without seeing anybody in camp, I'm thinking it's going to be Perkins, simply because Bryce really brings the dual threat aspect to his game. He can run the ball really well, and it was really unfortunate in Week 10 when they were playing down in Alabama when he was hurt against the Stallions the first time, because he was playing really well against Birmingham when Michigan was looking to beat Birmingham for the first time in now organization history, which hopefully they'll have the chance here this year to do so. But Danny, he played well in the first half of the game. They led 18-3 at the break at halftime there in the USFL Conference Championship, and then the wheels fell off the entire team. It wasn't just on Danny. But they're both good quarterbacks. But I think with the way that Bryce played in his limited action at the tail end of last year and how I've heard he's developing through camp, you can't pass up on a guy that brings the dual threat aspect to his game, especially when the Panthers they were surrendering a lot of yards on the ground to scrambling quarterbacks late in the year. Adrian Martinez is a heck of a quarterback. Jordan Ta'amu in the game where the Panthers beat the defenders, he was running the ball pretty well as well. But having that part of the game, even in the NFL, is so huge that if Perkins is able to get loose and he's able to scramble for 10, 15 yards, if the run game gets bottled up against a team like San Antonio or St. Louis or against Birmingham again, where Michigan typically relies on the run under Marcel Belfay, it's all good things. Those are gold star opportunities for the team.
What's the biggest strength of the team so far from what you've seen throughout spring practice?
Pass rush. The pass rush last year, particularly with a guy who we don't even know what number he's going to wear. He was wearing 0 there for a little while in spring practice, but it looks like he'll be 57. That's Breland Speaks. He led the league last year with just under 10 sacks. He had 2 more than the next highest leading sack total pass rusher. But him coming off the edge and this team having the depth that they do at the pass rush position, I mean, they've got Rondell Carter, too, who was also in the top 6 in sacks a year ago. So they got 2 demons coming off the edge, and if they can fill the inside, you can see why the Panthers' run defense was as good as it was last year. One thing they really pride themselves in is defending against the run as well. They were top 3 in both categories. So I would figure that'll be another big part of the Panthers game this year. Again, running the ball with quarterback involved and also standing up tall against the defense, or against the rush, I'm sorry.
Breland Speaks is a guy that, coming from Ole Miss, the biggest thing when you looked at him, power. He's not the fastest guy coming off the edge. Because, I mean, if you get him in a typical NFL system, you're going to want to use him and have him bulk up about 10, 15 more pounds and put him at the interior. Because that's just where he is so best at. But when you get him in the UFL, he's a guy that I think – how much is he weighing in right now? Because I see on Wikipedia he's at around 285. Is that true?
Yeah, he's right around that 280, 290 range. He's a transformer. And, I mean, the guy's 6'3" as well. When you pair him with Rondell Carter, and then you've got a guy that's as tenacious as Kenny Willekes is off the edge as well, you've got a pretty good trio there rushing the quarterback.
When you look at where this Panthers team is heading out, because first game going up against Memphis, it's going to be an interesting one. Expectation-wise, I think last year kind of exceeded, especially with what we saw in the first 2 years in the USFL. And then to come out in 2024 and make a lot of noise in the merger. Expectation-wise for Michigan, is this a year where Michigan can exceed expectations of what people can expect of them? Because I think I looked at the power rankings that XFL analysts and other guys put out. They have them 4th or 5th. Is this a top 2 team in the UFL?
I think a lot of it's going to come down to the quarterback play. Do you have a guy that can consistently throw the ball down the field and throw for more touchdowns than he does picks? That was the one issue Danny Etling had last year, was he had 5 picks and he threw for 4 scores. But I'm very, very confident that the Panthers are able to do that. I think 3 teams right now really stick out. I think it's the Panthers, the Stallions, and the Brahmas will all have really good teams. And if the Panthers can get to the quarterback as much as I think they should be able to this year, then I think they could win probably a game or 2 more than they did even a year ago. I mean, Coach Nolan took the team from what they were in the first year to winning 2 games after year 1 during the second year for Coach Nolan. Then his third year, they win 3 more games. Now you can't make that kind of jump again because then you'd be over 10 possible wins. But yeah, man, I think this team has all the tools to do it. There's a question mark surrounding the run game, but I think with the way that Coach Belfay calls the game, and the way that he's got his playbook set up, I'm fairly confident in this team's ability to perform very well this year. And if they should make it back to the playoffs. They should make it back to the playoffs, and then they should go head-to-head with the Stallions for the USFL crown.
I mean, that's going to be an interesting little preview for what y'all are going to get in about, almost 4 weeks now when the Birmingham Stallions come on out to Ford Field. So I think that'll be interesting. What I think is probably going to be the most intriguing one, Mike Nolan's defense going up against this high-powered Skip Holtz offense that has been borderline unstoppable. I know that there was a lot of talk around the offseason that he was probably going to go back to the college ranks. Maybe he could go back to Tech if they could get a better offer. But it was really cool to see Coach Holtz back in Birmingham, which I think it's a perfect fit for him. I think that's where he wants to finish his career. And I think that's where a lot of coaches want to finish their career. It's just another place where they can coach. So that's why you see guys like Mike Nolan, like Wade Phillips, other former NFL head coaches. They're spending their last few years coaching the game that they love. And that's what's so great about this league is that these dudes are it's basically the last chance of the pros. And that's what's so amazing about the UFL is that these guys are getting a second chance to go to the NFL. They're not worried about the money, of course. Now we say that, and then there's a players association about it. By the way, let's go ahead and talk about that for a little bit because the UFL came out, or the NFL Players Association came out and said, "Oh, we're going to stand in solidarity with the UFLPA in fighting for the same amount of money that the UFL and Fox Sports thinks they need to be paying for." If we're being honest with each other, the UFL is losing money. Fan attendance wise, it's not. They're about putting butts in the seats, and yet, where's The Rock been? Where has Daryl Johnson really been? Look, I give Daryl Johnson this. He's been on Radio Row promoting the league. He's done a good bit, but I don't think that they regularly need to be promoting the league, and that is what has been so critical about the UFL, and that's why I think this year is a very critical year for the UFL. We talked about this already before we met, so give me your thoughts on the PA, on the NFL PA pairing with the UFL, and what this could mean for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could give you a more streamlined front office answer. But, it's good for the players that they're sticking up for themselves. That's the only answer I can give from the player front because I don't regularly communicate with any of them. But it is difficult to try and grasp maybe where the league will be at in 6 months, a year, or even a few years down the road because these negotiations will likely continue on. But if they don't have the UFL, really where else are these guys going to get the opportunity to essentially be in a minor league format for football like minor leagues are set up for Major League Baseball? So the UFL is really their best opportunity to showcase the talents that they have. And the best example is for a guy like Jake Bates, who everyone knows the story at this point, right? He was a brick salesman that's turned himself into a pretty good UFL kicker and now is making a living kicking field goals in the same building as he played in the UFL. So this is really the opportunity for the United Football League players to get that promotion and to play in the NFL. And without the UFL, you've got a couple of other leagues, including the one in Canada. But there's really not that many other options if they want to stay consistently playing the sport. And then they have the advantage of playing in the spring where they can make the transition to the fall and summer camp for the NFL if they're good enough and they have a spot. So it's really hard to say where these negotiations are going to go because I'm not behind closed doors. But overall, I'm trying not to dip my toes too much into the conversation. I'm just happy to be there calling a ball game, man.
Yeah, that's fine too. But here's my thing, is that I understand where the kids are getting it. I am all for more money being in the pocket because of the opportunity that you're wanting to get at the next level. That should be the one thing, though, that that players need to be focused on is just getting to the next level. I understand that guys want to get it back. Of course, who doesn't? But at the same time, the focus needs to be on the NFL at the end of the day. So I don't know with what is going to come out of negotiations. I think that's going to be the only real headline that we get for the remainder of spring camp, unless something changes. But again, we'll probably get more news when we get over the next 2 weeks before the season actually starts. So again, we're not quite sure yet. Zach, I want to get your thoughts on this. Future of the league. How critical is this year for the UFL?
I think it's important. I think in these locations where the teams are, that they've implemented strategies to try to get, as you said earlier, to try to get butts in seats. And I would be surprised if the Panthers didn't see some kind of a jump in attendance this year, simply because there's too many mouths to feed in Detroit in terms of fans, where they can't even afford to get into Ford Field to go to a Lions game, where they could go to the entire season to go watch Panther football and still not have paid what is the same amount as a Lions ticket. So I think a lot of it has to do with eyes on the TV and butts in seats. And it's important this year that the product is good. I think the TV side of thing has done a good job. The broadcasts are very well put together. And the game day experience for these games is, I go to a lot of Lions games, man. And sitting up there in the booth for a Panthers game, it's not quite the same in terms of atmosphere because there aren't as many people in the stadium. It's just not going to be versus the NFL. But I love the league so far in my limited time with it, and I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to share the experiences with some of the people here just outside of Detroit. So it's an important year for sure, and I'm really curious to see next year when they go about expanding the league and having some different locations where the league's going to grow to. So you just never know. I think if they add another couple cities like Seattle or a team somewhere in Ohio, I don't know, just throwing out names like Canton where they play the Hall of Fame game. Yeah, man, I'm curious, and I've always got the wonder bug about where it's going to go.
Zach Linfield is the former, unfortunately, of what I have to say, play-by-play for the Michigan Panthers, but is also the game day host and public access director with Michigan Athletics. Zach, we'll be going on tour this year with the UFL. First stop will be in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
For Friday Night Lights. Houston will play St. Louis for the opening game of the UFL season. Zach, you want to help me get out to Michigan?
Listen, man, I will. The first game of the year for us is going to be in Memphis. I'm going to be heading down there on the 28th. I'm going to go see what Nashville's all about for a night. And then I'll be at home for the home opener the week after against the Stallions. It'll be a Friday Night Lights game as well. So anytime you're around Ford Field, man, come say what's up.
Hell yeah. Zach, last thing for you.
Yeah.
I asked a lot of people about this before because I've been watching Michigan basketball lately. Man, what the hell is going on with Michigan basketball? It just seems like the team has been in decline recently. What has happened over the last 5 or 6 years that has just been going on with this team? And look, I have a lot of love for Dusty, man. I think it's going to take time for him to turn it around.
Yeah, the whole freight train of Michigan basketball and the schedule that they're on, they're ahead of it. They're ahead of it. They won 8 games a year ago under Coach Howard. Then they flip it around this year. They lose 8 or 9 games. But I think maybe part of the strategy was unlocked by other teams. That Michigan loves the 7-foot pick and roll between Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. And they turn the ball over too many times. And that'll never get you any kind of success. And when you're lacking the 3 ball, they're not shooting 3-pointers as well as they used to. It's just a recipe for disaster. So, I'm confident in them that they could put a little run here together in March. Their first game in the Big Ten tournament will not be easy. It looks like they'll play Purdue. If Purdue can get by their first game. and that'll be essentially a home game for the Boilermakers. And then you play in the big one. So hey, listen, man, I'm happy that they're there after the year that they had a year ago and they won just 8 games. So all in all, I'm a Wolverine through and through, and I'm happy that they're winning games again.
Zach, where am I eating if I go to Detroit?
Where are you eating at? You got to go to a Coney Island, man. Go get yourself a Coney dog.
There you go. There you go. Zach Linfield, former play-by-play announcer of the Michigan Panthers, hopping on with us on Inside the Huddle, talking all things Michigan Panthers. Zach, appreciate the time, brother. Have a great rest of the week, and we will see you very soon.
You got it, man. Go Panthers.
Zach Linfield hopping on with us Inside the Huddle. We appreciate him and the time that he spent with us talking some Panthers football. Always a pleasure to talk UFL. All right, I think we're about halfway. No, we got 3 down, so we're about 3/8 of the way. We're almost halfway done with our UFL previews, which, by the way, we've had a lot of fun doing this year. It's really has been a lot of fun. As a reminder, guys, our broadcast is brought to you by our good friends over at vocalbreaks.com. Use that code LucasHill10 for 10% off of your monthly subscription. Let's go ahead and let's do our NFL draft breakdown, because we need to talk about this, because I don't think that there is a bigger draft that of all the craziness that we've seen this year. From the sport of football than with the draft. Because, look, we've had so much insanity go on from this year. And free agency-wise has been insane. It's been one of the craziest things that we've seen recently in a long time. And I'll say this: we've had a lot of signees this year, and it really, really concerns me with all that we've got. I think free agency this year has been the worst it's been in a while. But I will say, it's been very interesting. So many of you know, with the situation in the Jets, they just signed a quarterback. They got Justin Fields for 2 years, which I think was an interesting move. You saw what the Raiders did a couple of weeks back with or last week with Geno Smith, going to get him, which I thought was a fairly interesting move. And then there's just so much with this year's quarterback class that I think many people need to consider about. In no way, shape, or form do I think this is a deep quarterback class. But I will say that you have a lot of underrated stars in this year's group. Do I think everything is going to go to plan with what I want? Probably not. So, with this being said, guys, I'm bringing you Lucas Hill's official 2025 NFL mock draft. I am really excited to bring you guys all of this and more. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, let's go ahead and let's kind of get this thing started. So, here's what's going to happen. I'm basing it off of my own personal list. I'm only doing one trade. The rest, I don't know about. I think everything is going to go the same. So, let's go ahead and let's get this going. With the first pick, we have a trade. The Tennessee Titans by the way, thank you. with the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, we have a trade. The Tennessee Titans will trade the first overall pick with the New York Giants, and the Giants will select Cam Ward. And you guys may be thinking, well, why would they trade back? Listen. They're going to get Abdul. Listen, I promise you. The Giants need a quarterback. We all know that at the end of the day. It's a primary need. I think that trading back, it helps the Titans because you get a second and a fourth for it, which I expect will happen. And I think it's maybe even a key player. We'll see. Do I think it's going to be a big jump to help Tennessee at the end of the day? Probably not, but we'll see. With the second pick. But anyway, let me call it that. Cam Ward, to me, is a once-in-a-generation type of quarterback. He is the he is the most athletic passer in this year's NFL draft. And he is probably one of the best to come from the NFL draft in a long, long time. I think Caleb Williams is borderline bust. But again, we will see with what happens with Caleb Williams at the end of the day. With Chicago. To me, I think he's a bust. We'll see if it is. All right, let's continue along. With the second pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, the best overall prospect in this year's NFL Draft class. Now, things could change. Cleveland could go get Cam Ward. Maybe the trade won't happen. Maybe Tennessee will take Abdul Carter, which unironically is the third pick. We'll get to him in a little bit. But that might happen. And then if that's the case, does Cleveland pull the trigger and go for a quarterback? Do they pick Shedeur? We don't know just yet. Shedeur Sanders can go one of two things. He can be picked outside the top 5, or he'll be going to Cleveland. We don't know yet. Regardless of that, guys, this is where I have Travis Hunter. To me, is the best athlete in all of the NFL. I think with what you're getting in a guy like that, it's incredible. I think that he is arguably, to me, the most impressive athlete that we've seen in a while. He's going to play DB. I promise you, he's playing DB. For everybody that's saying, he's going to play 2 ways in the NFL, good luck settling that with front office management. That's stupid. That's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And now, with the third pick in the NFL draft, with the trade from New York, the Titans will select Abdul Carter. A once-in-a-generation type of talent is what they want to draft. Gives you somebody to pair along with Devondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons. Abdul Carter is a once-in-a-generation type talent that I think can make a major impact when he gets to the league. I love Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter is a very special player. But I don't know if the Titans want to waste a first-round pick or the number 1 overall pick on him. That's why I think they'll trade down and go get him. I'm not saying he's a wasted pick. I'm just saying that you got to think smart when it comes to getting guys like that. With the 4th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Will Campbell from LSU. He's been the best tackle in all of football. The arm length size, everybody's going to complain about that. It doesn't matter. Will Campbell is a special player, and there is no way that you can say, "Oh, well, his arms are too short. Oh, his arms are this." Shut up. Okay, he's fine with what he's doing at the moment. Will Campbell is an unbelievable left tackle. I think he's going to be a staple in that New England front 5. And I think he's going to do some great things whenever you get him paired alongside some can build up a once proud New England offensive line. That's where I see this guy going. With the 5th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was debating this earlier today. I don't know if they go for a D tackle or another guy to pair alongside. What's his name? With Brian Thomas. But eventually, you got to fill the needs of D tackle. Mason Graham is going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar. You are going to bring in a lot of rookies here. Now, this could change as well. I do think that another big need for Jacksonville could be at the receiver position, Tatoria McMillan. Teteriola McMillan is a big need that a lot of teams need. It is an absolute need for a guy like that. He could pair alongside Brian Thomas and be an impact there. Would definitely help a guy like Trevor Lawrence. But will it happen? I don't know. I'm not sure if it will happen at the end of the day. But I think you got to bolster up your defensive line, and that's where Mason Graham comes in. That's the type of impact you make. Will Johnson is also a guy that can go top 5. I'm not sure, though. The 6th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. My initial mock draft, the Vegas Raiders select Teteriola McMillan. I don't know how you say it. T-Mac. McMillan is a guy that I think can make a big impact for the Raiders. The Raiders just lost Devontae Adams in free agency. All right. Let's just be real. Guys, Devontae Adams was, or I say that free agency, they lost him to a trade. You bring in Brock Bowers. The quarterback position is also an interesting one. They could get Shador, but you also have to consider they just got Geno Smith. But again, Geno Smith is 34, nearing the end of his career, but you're coming off of a season where he had a 70% completion percentage and he had a career high in passing yards. He could get better with his field awareness, but overall, I think that this is a very, very good. He is a very, very good defensive guy. I think that he's going to possess a lot of talent, and I think that he's going to do some big things for the Raiders. I think that he's going to be a guy that you can plug into this offense. He's going to be a jump ball guy. He wins the one-on-one battles every single time. I think he's going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL within the next 2 years or 3 years. With the 7th pick in the NFL draft, this one was another interesting one. Shador could go here despite what many people will think. But in my opinion, with the 7th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the New York Jets will select Armand Membu, offensive tackle from Missouri. Membu really boosted his draft stock in 2025, especially at the combine. You talk about a guy that is a mountain on offensive tackle. I mean, unbelievable mountain. You're talking about a guy that's 6'4", 332 pounds, one of the best athletes in the draft, 31 bench reps on the bench press, a 4'9", 140, a 34-inch vert. And he does all of that. So I know he was a second-team All-SEC, and I know he played a lot of right tackle. I know he didn't play at left, but I do think with what you're getting, you pair him alongside with what the Jets get last year, and I think that's a pretty happy-looking lineup. I mean, you've already got a pretty good left tackle on the side in Olu Fashanu, that I think is going to be a staple there, who played very well last year, was one of the most underrated guys at left tackle. And I think when you get Membu out there at right, dude, that's going to be an unbelievable offensive line. Two of the best young offensive linemen in the game. Is going to be really interesting. With the 8th pick, the Carolina Panthers select Jalen Walker from Georgia. You need an edge rusher. You absolutely need an edge rusher if you're Carolina. Because, look, I'll give them this. You had one of the worst defenses. I won't say this. You have one of the worst defenses in NFL history. But I will say this. You signed some guys. You got Tershawn Wharton with a 3-year deal. A guy that really impressed last year. 8.5 sacks, including the playoffs. Had a really good career. Had a really good season last year at the interior. I think it's huge that you pair him alongside Derek Brown. Defensive line wise, that's a big need. It's very critical that you get a lot of guys off of the interior. It sucks because Derek Brown needs another guy on the outside. Derek Brown was hurt last year. And we've seen what he can do as a defensive tackle. Had an NFL record for the most tackles in the season. As a D tackle, 103. How is that possible? That's impressive. But you also have to consider this is because Derek Brown's on the reserves. He didn't play last year. Had a meniscus injury. Now he's going into the second year of his 4-year contract. You need a guy to be a staple on the edge, and that's where Jalen Walker. You have lacked the pass rush, and it's hurt you severely. You could say Ashawn Robinson is another guy, but you haven't really seen the same consistency from Robinson. He did get a 3-year deal. Was I impressed? I don't know, man. I think Shy Tuttle can be good, but I think edge-wise, you lack that presence. You really do. And it's something that you really need. So, again, we'll see what they can do. I don't know if Carolina is going to be sold with Jalen Walker. Things can change. With the 9th pick, here we go. Here's a surprise for you. The New Orleans Saints select Shedeur Sanders, quarterback from Colorado. I know what you guys are thinking. I understand. Believe I do. Things can change with this one. Hell, the Saints need a DB now. So if Will Johnson falls into the Saints' lap, oh my God. Hell yes, I'll take him. But here's where I'm at with this one. Kellen Moore is coming into year 1 of being the head coach here at New Orleans. The thing about Shedeur is this. You pair him along with an offensive coordinator in Doug Nussmeier, who has plenty of experience. Their quarterback's coach in Philly has been with Kellen Moore for a while. Was there with Dallas with him. He's been with Alabama, Washington, Fresno State. Actually coached against him at Fresno State. Bring in Scott Tolzien as the quarterback's coach, who was the quarterback's coach in Dallas. Also with Kellen Moore. So, my thing is this. What does your quarterback look Well, you just restructured their Carr's contract. Will things happen there? We'll see. So what does this mean with the restructured contract? Well, you obviously have to look at this from an inside perspective and see that, look, Derek Carr has not been the quarterback people have thought that he would be whenever he came to New Orleans. And that all goes back to Las Vegas. It all goes back to his injury that he sustained during the postseason in 2016, I think. He's been hesitant in the pocket. He hasn't shown that confidence that he can be an elite playmaker as a quarterback. And so, and you look at where Spencer Rattler is this year, he's just young. He's not a future NFL quarterback to me. I'm sorry. I had high hopes for him, but I just don't see a future where he's going to be an elite quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, on the other hand, is a guy that you can build your offense around. I think he has a lot of. I think there should be high expectations for a guy like Rattler, or not Rattler, but for Shedeur. I think you can build an offense around him. I just didn't see anything impressive from Spencer Rattler. That could be because of the health, but again, you need a guy. You need a quarterback. The city of New Orleans has been kind of looking for a quarterback. Again, I understand the defensive line wise. Cam Jordan's getting old. Peyton Turner hasn't turned out the way people have thought to be. You're probably going to end up losing a guy like Chase Young. In fact, I think you will lose Chase Young because of free agency. But you got to think about this. What are you going to do at the defensive end position? So that's one thing. I don't know if this is going to be tried and true. I don't think that Shedeur is going to go to New Orleans. I have a semi-high probability that he will end up going to New York or Tennessee, depending on what the team ends up doing. I think Tennessee sold on Abdul Carter, though. So if that's the case, maybe Cam Ward will go to Cleveland. Maybe he'll go to New York. Either or. Shedeur may end up going to either one of those. But again, we're not completely sure on that one. With the 10th pick, the Chicago Bears select Tyler Booker. All right. Here's where I'm at with Tyler Booker. Tyler Booker, to me, is the best guard in the NFL draft. With what Chicago showed last year, a lot of inconsistency here. How does year two of the Caleb Williams tenure goes? You bring in Ben Johnson, who was an excellent offensive coordinator in Detroit, assistant coach of the year. It's big, because you only have 8 draft picks this year. So what are you going to do there? Well, you also bring in Declan Doyle as your OC, who was a tight ends coach with the Broncos. Offensive line-wise, I think you do have some strong points. You got Kieran Amadahi, who had a fairly decent year last year. I thought was one of the most underrated offensive linemen in the NFL. But again, I don't know with what to expect. I know there was a lot of people in Chicago that didn't really like what he had to bring, but I do think that there's a lot that can be expected of him. I think that this kid has a huge upside. Again, I think Armand Membu could be a good choice here. I think that you might get another tackle in either Josh Simmons or Kelvin Banks or whoever. But I think Booker going to Chicago will be a decent pick. Here's one that's going to piss off a lot of people. With the 11th pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Jade Bear. You got to get a DB. If you're the 49ers, you have to get a DB. And why do I say that? When you look at pre-agency wise, Javaris Ward is going to be gone. Majority of this secondary is done. Now you're going into this year with who? Well, not really a whole lot that you can be happy with. Not a lot of people that you can really say was impressive, I guess. But again, you're losing Javaris Ward, who will probably dip his toes in the free agency. You're losing a lot. You're losing a lot here. Rock Yassin, who's a former All-Rookie, who's going to go into free agency. So now who do you bring back from this year? Well, Jair Brown from Penn State, who had a pretty decent year when it comes to tackle. Excellent tackler, by the way. Other than that, that's really about it. Everybody else is kind of more of a free agency type of guy. Trey Tomlinson you bring in, who's a Jim Thorpe Award winner not too long ago with TCU. But he struggled with injury. So now what are you supposed to expect of him? I don't know. So there's a lot of question marks around that DB position. You could also go for an offensive lineman. Maybe you could go for an edge player. Again, we don't know. With the 12th pick, the slider of the draft, the Dallas Cowboys will select Will Johnson, DB from Michigan. Let me run through this real fast because my battery's running low on my laptop. With the 13th pick, Malachi Starks is going to go to Miami. 14th, I got Tyler Warren to Indianapolis. 15th, I got Shamar Stewart going to Texas A&M. 16th, I got Michael Williams going to Georgia. 17th, I got Walter Nolan going to Cincinnati. 18th, I got Josh Simmons going to Seattle. James Pierce Jr. to Tampa Bay. Huge game for the Bucs. Colston Loveland to Denver. I think Nicky Manwari is going to be a guy that's going to head on out to Pittsburgh. I think that the Steelers are going to pick him in the year 2021. 22nd, I got Emeka Egbuka going to Los Angeles. 23, Maxwell Harrison, the biggest riser in this year's draft, is going to go to Green Bay. Donovan Ezeraku, the reigning ACC and Defensive Player of the Year and the All-American, going to Minnesota. Houston gets Matthew Golden. They pair along him with Tank Dell, and CJ Stroud's going to have two absolute dogs to throw to. Rams get Josh Connolly. Baltimore gets Nick Scourton, arguably the biggest surprise that fell this far in the draft. Detroit gets Mike Green. Washington gets Luther Burden. Buffalo gets Kenneth Grant. Kansas City, to me, is going to get a guard. And then the Philadelphia Eagles will get Derek Harmon from Florida. That's going to wrap it up for us here today on Inside the Huddle. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you all tomorrow. Y'all have a great rest of